because I have. So emotionally, every single day I look and I say, okay, where am I on this emotional 5 point, star? Well, I can stop the share. Where am I on this emotional scale today? And sometimes I'm a little bit of fevery wood. So Shayna, if I have an imbalance in the wood element, what type of personality things am I likely? What kind of emotions and things with the wood element am I likely exhibiting?
Frustration,
Hmm.
anger,
Hmm.
anxiety,
Hmm. Irritability.
irritability. Yeah.
Hmm. So I look at that and I'm like, hmm, look at me today. Every single thing Shayna has said, including good morning, has kind of irritated the fuck out of me. What is up with
Not
that?
very creative. Yeah.
Yeah, not very creative, no. Does that make sense, Ida? Have you ever woken up and you're just, maybe you didn't wake up that way, but at some point during the day, you're just like a little irritable today?
Never.
Never. Yeah, I knew there
I'm,
would be
I'm only
somebody.
joking. Yeah,
Good.
yeah. I do find myself, excuse me, flashing irritation at times.
Mhm. All right, so let's look at that. Sometimes I have irritation and I don't have to, but if I wanted to, heaven forbid there's no rules that say I have to. I could have this ultra simplified, but I could also look at the five elements and say, hey, I am awfully fucking irritated today, and I don't really know why. It could be hormonal, it could be the moon, it could be alignment of the planets. I could have slept in a weird way, and now I'm just irritated, you know? Okay, the wood element is clearly out of balance. Well, I can look at that and I have a framework of some things that I can pay it because do I want to focus on the anger? And do I want to go around all day saying, I will not be angry, I will not be irritated? Do I want to do that necessarily? Especially if it's anger, like if it's because the wood element is everything from irritation to just full blown rage. So do I want to no, like,
No, because if you put your attention on it, it's going to expand in your experience. You
oh,
want to de-emphasize the.
all right. But I have to emphasize something, don't I?
Sure, you have to harmonize it with the other.
Bingo. What am I going to focus on then? I'm going to focus on what isn't controlling the wood element. So let's look at that. And you do not have to think of it this way, but it is a way that I will be offering in clinic because if we want to work with emotions, I just happen to have a really good way in the context of the four directions, though. Without the four directions, this isn't a thing. This doesn't really work. Without somebody being able to pay attention and focus to it. Maybe they're not doing the four directions and maybe they just have really good focus, then they could do it. I take that back. Anybody with impeccable focus and attention would be able to interact with their emotions using the five elements. But I don't know how any other way than the four directions. So I was going to show you that, man, I just can't get the wood element, to balance because I'm irritable, I'm angry, and, you know, I'm going to go to the five elements and see what I can do about that. When you are getting angry, what is one of the first things they tell you to do? It can be a little bit irritating sometimes. They're going to tell you to calm down and just do what?
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. I want to control my anger with my breath. Where did that come from? Maybe it came from 5,000. No, no, five elements isn't 5,000. Five elements came after yin yang and yin yang school. So thousands of years old still. So it just keeps showing up in our experience that this actually is a very good representation of the human experience. It's a functional grouping. There's no yin is relative to yang. You cannot say that black is absolutely the color of yin. You cannot say that. But it is when compared to white. Inactivity is yin when compared to activity. So this includes the theory of relativity. And it's thousands of years old. And it's where binary code came from. And it's where all advanced forms of mathematics and calculus came from. But we could talk about that some other time. Anyway, going back to the whiteboard, I think that might have elucidated it enough. That I gave the example of, and I could do any of these elements and give you the same example and it will still work. That I woke up angry, and this is the practice that I do myself. So if I feel a little bit of extra irritation, I'm not going to focus on the irritation. I'm not going to focus on what's creating it. But I just know that it's not being controlled. I just know that because it's out of control. It's just not being controlled. It's up, it's flaring, it's angry, it's irritating my heart and my shen, and I'm disturbed. So I'm going to go to the breath. I'm going to use my breath to control the anger. And I know we don't, control is a certain kind of context. Really what we want to use is the word harmonize. Harmonize is the most appropriate word. I want to use the breath to harmonize and balance the wood element. And because if I don't, what do you think is going to happen next? I am angry or I'm irritated and I allow that to continue. What do you think that's going to progress to? Which element is it going to start to damage? It's going to start to damage fire. It's not going to create what I need. So my desires are going to get all messed up too. And before you know it, I'm going to chase some rabbit because I'm in this emotional roller coaster. And now all of my desires are jacked up too because they're not being led by the spirit anymore. My desires are being led by something else. And then we start to get into what we call the pathological cycle. And that fits as well. It gives me a chill when I think about how well that fits when things start to go wrong. What starts to control your desire? What when you look at the world today, would we say that desire is superficial in general? You know, the way that people would commonly talk about it. Yes, we know they're always, but people want things and stuff. In general, you know, we live in a capitalistic country. A lot of desire and thoughts about desire will be on the things that we want. Isn't that true? That's very physical, very earth, very metal. And so it starts to go the wrong direction. And now all of a sudden our desires are being led by boundaries and boxes that we've put ourselves in. That's metal. The element that it's supposed to be creating starts to get weak, and it starts to not be able to do its thing anymore. It starts to evaporate. Desire would start to evaporate. If I let my anger go long enough, it will almost be completely controlled by other elements that I don't want it to be controlled by. I don't want my desire to be controlled by my ego, which is associated with the earth element and the human being, because I'm the physical human being associated with the earth element. Makes sense. And that's why I use it. That's why I'm today, when I wake up and I start to move and I start to do my thing, I'm like, all right, you know, I feel pretty balanced. I don't have to focus on this too much today. I'm all right. Where am I? And then what do I need to focus on though? And which direction, when I identify an imbalanced on it, do I focus on? And this is an accumulated practice. And
I don't know what you're asking. Can you reframe the question? Like the opposite
yeah,
one.
so I have 4 directions of attention, and I notice that I'm angry. And I know that focusing on my breath can help control that anger, bring that anger, balance it, harmonize it, bring it where I want it to be. Now,
Right. So it was an emotional thing that I noticed was pulling all of my attention. So I
right,
put the focus somewhere in my body
in your body.
because that's inside myself and that helps balance or harmonize with the pull towards cognitive or emotional. I want to get in my body that helps ground me. So it takes emphasis away from, it takes momentum and away from the feeling. It brings it to internally instead of this external thing.
Yeah. I think when you talk about going straight to the feeling, that's an accumulated technique. And I agree. And I think that's more of a
Sure, but if
combination.
I just found myself being angry
Mhm.
and annoyed, um, I know that if I if I can't immediately track where was my mind just a minute before, and that's I'm allowing that to make me angry, then it's this free floating feeling that who knows where it came from. I got it from a hormonal imbalance, or I got it from the TV show I watched last night,
Yeah,
or whatever. It doesn't matter, but
doesn't
I
matter.
still have to incorporate some attention and will towards balance. So what I do is because it emotions feel. Uh, I have a history of knowing that it was probably thoughts. It was probably thoughts. So let me get in my body, in my breath. Where are my feet on the floor? And then it gives me some balance of the emotion not pulling me away into thoughts that I want to label. That's the reason. That's the reason. My neighbor's an idiot. My dog is bothering me. My whatever. It pulls me into my body, and then I have more space, and
Mhm.
then I that's how I evaluate is to get in my four directions gives me a more sense of balance, more
Yeah.
space, and then I can navigate from there. And
Mhm.
then I might notice that I need to drink some water because I'm dehydrated, or I may notice which I wouldn't notice if I didn't apply some attention and intention to get in a better balance, make more space so that I can navigate with more clarity.
Yes. Okay, I like that. And then I'll take all of that and I'll put it into steps. So, because I noticed that the clinical manuals that I like, they put things into steps for me. And so, why is that useful? Because then when I have a patient and I want to do a particular treatment, I can go through my treatment principles. I can go through my strategies. And it's like step
Sure.
one, evaluate
Deconstruct
this.
and reconstruct.
Exactly. And I'm noticing that I really like that. So so I'm describing to you my emotional practice. So what I do with my emotional practice is, first of all, I have to be doing my four directions. Otherwise, I can't identify where I am, where I want to go, any of that, right? Because I'm
Right.
not
There's no
present.
discernment. There's no
There's no
space because
discernment,
you're
there's
not
no
present.
space. So we can't even talk about it. But since it's us, we have our four directions and we have identified that there is an imbalance in our emotional elements. Now, what I do is step one, and Donna just went straight at it. If I wake up and I feel a little bit of anger, I can't deny that. I can't just pretend. Because you're in a state. It's just not the second that you notice that you're irritable, you don't stop being irritable. Awareness of it doesn't just instantly evaporate it because it's biological as well. You got things moving through your blood and it needs to move. It needs to run its course. So we're not going to deny it. We're not going to we've obviously not tried to prevent it because it's there already. So we're not doing that either. But what we're going to do is we're just going to go back to our practice. And I'm going to fill the cognitive direction with something. So step one, before I fill the cognitive direction with something, because that's not step one. Step one, I go to the element of earth, because the element of earth is associated with intention, attention, thought, and ego. And Donna alluded that if I am feeling something like irritability, if it's going to get to anger, or let's go from irritability to frustration and then to anger and then to rage. If it's going to progress that way, thoughts are involved. And that is the earth element. So I want to make sure, first and foremost, step one, I take possession of earth. And that will be make sure my 4 directions are intact before I do anything else at step one. Does that make sense for step one? I'm describing my practice, my emotional practice. I haven't done this yet. And this will be in my book, and this is how I hope to work with folks in clinic. And it's backed by thousands of years of literature.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's what I
Step
do
one.
all day, every day.
Yep. Now, typically, because I have an accelerated practice, I have not left my body, even if I'm irritable. And this is an earnest thing. Now, so step 2 can be different for different people. So I'll describe my step 2, which is go to the breath. Because that's my intention and will. I already know that that's going to help me to increase my personal power. And I already know that if I want to continue what I'm doing right now, which is working with my emotional elements, I need to have intention and will and personal power. And so I go to the breath. And so for me, step 2 is going to the breath because I haven't left the body. Now, if I have, I need to go back to the body. I need to go back. For me, it would be go back to the body and then go to an external and then go back to the breath. Does that make sense? Kind of an order of operations of things?
It does make sense. I go to the breath right away, but that's not for the same reason. It's
Right.
because it's the thing. Breath and feet on the floor to me get me right back. Oh yeah, body.
Of
And then
course.
I do my golden line, and then everything kind of. Then I'm in. Now I've got space. I
Yeah.
immediately have space, and then I
Yeah.
have discernment,
But
and I
you
can
would,
identify
Mhm.
the irritant much more easily, even though that's not what I'm
that's
trying
not,
to
doesn't
do.
matter. Yeah, but
I don't
still,
have to fix it, but everything becomes more apparent.
it will.
The path to navigate and the obstacles to avoid or remove become more apparent
Agreed.
once I do that.
I think so too. And then, so you would be able to create your own order of operations based on the template that I'm creating for you. I'm just describing mine so that you can create yours. But now here's the kicker. And this is the thing that is what makes it the practice that I'm doing. I don't need to identify the irritant. I do need to identify the imbalanced emotion. And of course, that's going to be easy to do at this stage. Does that make sense? So I have
Absolutely.
identified.
But usually what happens for me is that as soon as I balance, I find space, the reason for the irritant becomes, it's like I can't help but notice.
Sure.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was thinking before I
Of
went to bed,
course.
or that was the conversation that I
That's,
had. I
and
don't even
remember,
have
yep,
to change any of that or fix it or try to do
mm-mm.
anything about it. It's just becomes apparent.
Yes, and the branches do take care of themselves and they do become apparent. But
And even if
now,
it doesn't, I don't care really.
right.
It's like whatever it was, if I need to see it to help me navigate more elegantly next time, it will become apparent. And if I
Mhm.
don't, it just is it has transmuted into something else, and I don't need it. I don't need to focus on it any more than I already have.
Absolutely. Yep. So Donna just explained that the identification process is easy peasy pumpkin easy. It's not going to be for everybody. I'm glad that it is for you and it is for me. That's cool. So I'm still describing my practice, and then it's like a template. So now we know the what we would call the disturbance, right? Actually, nobody else has ever actually just called it that just now, because it would be the pathogenic channel in Chinese medicine. We've actually just identified a potential pathological channel.
Right, the interference.
The interference, yes, the imbalance. Where is it most imbalanced? You're going to notice a lot of attributes in that area. I'm a little bit more irritated. I'm a little bit more mylar flushed. I'm starting to experience these heat symptoms. I'm starting to get this headache because I'm so irritated. That is all liver symptoms. wood element. So, you're filling the categories. Oh, I got too much in this category. That is an obvious and apparent imbalance. So I'm just describing the practice that I would do to address the imbalance that we have used as our example, which was irritability. I woke up and I felt very irritable today. And we know that the emotion of feeling irritated is associated with something. So I'm telling you what I would do. So, okay, I am irritated. I know that. I might even talk about it to myself because that's the voice of power. I'm talking out my practice, right? I'm not ignoring the emotion. I'm not denying the emotion. I'm not going to try to stuff down emotions. But as Donna pointed out, emotions are led and progress often by how we think about them. And that is the element of earth. Our intention, attention, quiet attention, or even our words in our mind and ego can all be associated with the element of earth.
Right. I think immediately not labeling it, just identifying the interference and stepping right into the middle of it, not to fix it, not to change it, just to see what it is. Oh, this is annoyance.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's my breath, here are my feet, here's my golden line. Oh, that it immediately loses power
Mm-hmm.
when I do that because I'm placing my attention on other points
Other points, yeah.
That take the intensity of the interference down, lowers the temperature immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can do something with it.
Yeah. And I like that. And I think that any degree of attention away from the stimuli to some extent will eliminate, or it will reduce the momentum of the stimuli because it doesn't have the attention that it needs to exist. But if we had a functional grouping that could help and assist that process, well, then that's what this is. So
Right.
if I have felt the imbalance in the wood element and I woke up irritable, I am already going to, and remember, this is a little bit of an accelerated discussion. So I already have attention in my body. I already have attention into my senses and my environment, and I have attention into my breath. I'm going to start to fill my cognitive direction with what I would look at as the harmonizing element. And I'm describing my personal practice. I'm not telling anybody what to do, or I'm telling you now, how do I work with the four directions of my own emotions? Because I'm an emotional being. And sometimes I wake up a little irritable. I slept on my keys. I don't think that's happened, but I could imagine myself waking up irritable because I slept on my keys all night. My body, maybe it was on my gallbladder channel. That's gonna mess things up a little bit, and I might wake up irritable. Okay, I've woken up irritable, and now I'm going to fill my cognitive direction with something. Let's go back to our whiteboard. I am going to fill my cognitive direction with the element that isn't doing the proper harmonizing action. So metal and my breath should be harmonizing or controlling, not creating, controlling or harmonizing. So couldn't we assume, based on this, Don, not any absolute thing, but based on this functional grouping of the observation of experience, if the wood element is our imbalance because we're feeling the irritability, we have a little bit of mylar flush, and we can feel a little bit of a headache coming on, and it's throbbing, and well, now we're really starting to see some element, it's getting pathogenic. Like we could even start to get sick, physically sick, if that's allowed to continue. And if it's continued over decades, it could become chronic and it could kill us. So this is important. But based on this particular function and grouping, what is the most logical element that I would focus on? Because this is no longer being controlled, right? It's out of control. It's out of balance. It's not being harmonized properly. So what element would I go to harmonize it? That should be harmonizing it. The metal element. right, Shayna? Because that's the grandparent. That's the one that controls the wood. Water creates the wood. So in my practice, if I notice that I woke up irritable, I'm going to focus on a bunch of metal things. And that includes what in Chinese medicine we would call correspondence of the five elements. And so what that looks like for me, I pay attention to the sky a little bit more. I definitely make sure that my breath is deliberate and smooth with the least amount of muscular tension. I really love to pay attention to clouds. I'll look into the trees a little bit more as my trick of attention. If it's not, Chicago middle winter, I like to focus on wind on my skin, which is a little bit of wood element and it's a little bit of breath and air and wind. So now I'm starting to reconnect my elements. But I fill the cognitive direction of attention and I take that with me throughout the day. Even if I need mantras, even if I need productive self-dialogue, even if I need pictures, even if I need quotes, even if I need to ask Shayna to remind me, I will focus on the metal element because I don't want to focus on the anger. I don't want to focus on the irritability. I don't want to try to change things. I don't want to try to control. I just want to help harmonize. And the way that I help harmonize is by charging the metal element. And Donna, what do you think that does to the irritability over the course of the day?
I think it quiets it, the intensity, it dials down the intensity of it during the course of the day.
Absolutely. And it just,
And it actually may reveal especially when you're in your body and you're listening, there's more space. It may reveal the food
reveal what?
mineral or something that a mineral or a vitamin, like you can have a craving about some food or thing or
Mhm.
exercise, something that addresses the
Yes.
the source of the irritability without you even having to identify it.
Bingo. And so what I would do is if you came into my clinic, Donna, and you said, and you gave me all these symptoms, like one of the primary symptoms is you're going to have pain in your body. And let's say that this has been going on for a little while. You're not Donna now, like with the mind that you have now. Let's say
It
that,
still happens to me. There's still
oh,
a whole bunch of symptoms that line up. I just got over a 2 week sinus infection, so
mm,
I know that there's something that's in some interference, and I was doing the best I could to make space and feed my body, listen to what my body is trying to tell me it needs.
mhm,
If it needs sleep, it needs sleep. If it needs stretching and exercise, it needs that. If it needs more water, if it needs more
mhm.
protein, if it needs more minerals, I'm trying to listen to it.
Yeah,
And I bet if I had this um, way of remembering it, then I might be able to zero in on that
quicker.
better,
Mhm. Quicker, more accurate, and maybe even be able to do it for other people.
more elegantly. Yes,
And maybe help them identify it as well.
true.
So if someone came in and they had the symptoms of a liver imbalance, and this is grossly oversimplifying because people have if it's all connected. So if one thing is disharmonized, everything is disharmonized. And there's never balanced. We're always harmonizing. It's always moving. And one thing is always going to be a little bit and a little. So I'll be 110 years old. I'll be working in the garden with Shayna, and I'll just be like, well, no, wait a second. What's starting to accumulate here? I feel it, and something's starting to get a weird way. I don't like the way that Shayna's holding the rake, and she's not using the proper technique, and I'm starting to feel, why would I care about that? So you see what I mean? I'm giving an example of where I'm identifying where an imbalance is beginning to occur, and then I need to make a course correction with that. And that's the practice that I explained. But if I could only give the practice that I explained if somebody had a firm foundation in the four directions, because the four directions is how you fill the cognitive direction with metal stuff, the color that is associated with metal, images that are associated with metal, seasons, and maybe particular scents, as Donna was saying, and then we can apply it to dietary There are different foods that we could eat, all just to really boost and focus on the root of the disharmony of the wood element, and that is the metal element. And so, and that's associated with our lungs and our breathing and things like that. Our ability to let go. If we're feeling a lot of grief, that can definitely. Have you ever noticed that sometimes when people grieve, they can get really angry? They get mad. And of course, we would say that that's appropriate to some extent, you know. Somebody hurts somebody I care about, I am going to get angry. I'm going to go from grief to full-blown rage. And that is an example of when the five elements just starts working almost in opposite as it should very quickly. And then we get really sick, and that's really dangerous when that type of thing happens. It feels awful as well. Like we don't want to feel that way, of course. Unless we're really pathogenic, and then we might even start to crave violence and anger. And on a societal level, maybe we start to pass that on, you know, to generation after generation. Violence is cool, you know. So if somebody
Or
came into my clinic,
desensitized
though,
to it.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Or desensitized to
Or
it.
desensitized to it, yeah. Like I play video games, and there was a moment where I realized all I'm doing is going around killing stuff. Since then, I haven't finished a video game because I play them in different ways. If it has building, I like to spend an hour building stuff. You know, I don't like watching a bunch of TV, and I hate commercials. So I'll jump into this video game and I'll build this little town and I'll log out, and that's the end of it. You know, I don't have to go around killing stuff if I don't want to. So it's just giving an example, you know, why do we find this so entertaining? Is that why? Like, but that's a totally different story. So, but Donna, if you weren't practicing Qigong and you didn't, I'm not going to be able to ask you to do some of that stuff. Not outside of just establishing one direction, right? Because you're new, I don't really know you that well. But what I would do is I would use this exact same diagnostic medically. And that's why it works so well. And even Tai Chi or the Qigong that I recommend would be based around this exact diagnostic. I can use it in that's how I start to recommend dietary therapy. That's how I can start to recommend what to do with your mind, what to do, all based around this five elements, and it works. If the person does it, it can work. It can work, I will say. It works. It's very final, and nothing is going to work for everybody because we're all so different. But so the idea here is if Donna came in or somebody came in and they were experiencing a lot of like mylar flush, and their eyes were very red and itchy and dry, and their head was, you were getting this throbbing, pounding headache, and you know, they're very irritable and angry. Well, I'm going to treat. Donna, do you think I'm really going to go and treat the liver and the wood element? Is that going to be my primary and only focus?
No, you're going to feed the breath element to make sure that it's optimal to help so that the body can achieve homeostasis on its own.
Mm-hmm.
You want to enable the body to do what it knows how to do.
Bottom line. Yeah. I want to help the body harmonize yin and yang. That's it. Which will, the yin and yang will, what's the word? Yin and yang will manifest themselves in a way that can be grouped within these five elements. It can be grouped. That's just one functional grouping based on thousands of years of observation. A different functional grouping may work also. Maybe an indigenous functional grouping, an indigenous medicine, or, you know, way of thinking about things. So if somebody came in and they were experiencing a lot of those symptoms that I explained that's associated with the wood element in the liver and gallbladder pathology, I'm going to make sure that I treat the lung channel and the large intestine channel. And I'm going to make sure that I do a little bit with the kidney channel and the water element, because that's the root of the pathology. But I am going to put some liver stuff in there because there's some symptoms, I don't want people leaving angry, so I will soothe the liver as well, even though I know even though what we're experiencing is liver symptoms, that's not the etiology. The true etiology in the context of these 5 elements is a disharmony in the imbalance, and wood is no longer being controlled. And this was just one way of looking at it. There's actually other ways of looking at the cycle that works as well. But that's what I do. I do it every day. Every day I'm like, okay, where am I? I was going through school and I had these comprehensive exams, and I didn't want to go through emotional roller coasters. And I did really well until one, I found out what score I would get. I found out that I would be able to see the percentage. Before I thought it was just pass fail. And I'm like, cool, pass fail. Just do that. I don't have to give any extra cognitive attention to the score. And then they're like, oh, you get to see the percentage. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be a 71% student, 70% to pass. I don't have to be a 100% student, but I don't want to be on that other extreme. And so I started to focus on that a little bit. And I was like, no, 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 no. That's starting to create something in me that feels very imbalanced. I don't like that comparing and contrasting. And that's not going to help me focus on the material right in front of me. It's the material right in front of me that's going to help me do well. So I have to make sure I balance my focus. And that's, a person might have to make those adjustments all day long. And it doesn't get tiring and tedious. It's empowering because you're guiding yourself through the storm of the world. And sometimes it's not always elegant. Sometimes you zig when you should have zagged. But with enough self-awareness, we can learn and grow and evolve from that. The evolutionary tendency is towards self-awareness. We see it in the world around us, in the universe itself. The cell has a brain. The human has a brain. As we get bigger, there are obviously other types of micros and the macros and vice versa. So does that make sense? I
It
kind of
does.
describe what I do.
It does. It makes it a little easier to remember.
So I really try to charge all of the different things that I can do for myself. And, so I stick to the same example, and I wake up with a little bit of irritability. Well, I'm going to do some physical things with my body that focus on more breath, more of the movement of the water element, because I know that's going to soothe the liver element. And then I know that my emotions and heart shen will start to harmonize as well, and I'll start to feel better about everything. So I'm just going to go do these different things. I'm maybe going to have some food that I know will help nourish and help the elements that are imbalanced. Does that make sense? And that's a strategy I can share as well as do myself. And that's what makes it so cool. And it involves the 4 directions of attention, which is why we're here today. Because I need my 4 directions of attention if I'm going to A, be aware of any of this, and B, take possession of my mind and my spirit. That's a complete sentence, actually. Just take possession again of my own mind, my own body, and my own spirit.
And I have to remind myself, no, I remember to remind myself to make it fun, because I really prefer life is much better doing this. It's not just about when I get in a rough spot and I want to get out of a rough spot. It's a way to navigate through life and relationships, and um, the more self-awareness and the more that I play with it and use it and learn about it, and I have to remember to make it fun, because it is fun. It's otherwise I will be focusing too hard on trying to remember and keeping score of myself and all of those traps of attention that come in, and or punishing myself when I don't get it right, and instead just um, making it fun and adding a sense of humor to it. Because when I do, let's say, get aggravated or irritated, and then I do the things that you just illustrated, and I have more space and I can discern the cause sometimes, or I can intend attention in a direction that better serves me. It lowers the intensity of that. I somehow like layer a cartoon episode over it, or I see the humor in my own humanness that gave me. I'm clenching my teeth, and over what? Like over what? If I can see the humor in my humanity, it it also makes the process of navigating more fun, and then I can infuse more imagination and creativity into it, which is really rewarding and pleasurable, and um, it's a much more desired feeling to take through my day.
Yeah. And if I were to say somebody, if they wanted to focus on humor and fun, which direction of attention would that be? The cognitive direction. So humor, music, creativity, all of these things, logic, deduction, not just words, not just language factors. There's all these other factors that exist in the cognitive direction. And that's what makes this practice so freaking awesome, is when you start to dive into that cognitive direction, you can fill it with things like humor and fun. So for example, can I give an example of that, of what I think you're talking about?
Sure.
See, yesterday, we just come back from break, and our teachers are shit, how was break? And everybody's like, oh, it just wasn't long enough. And everybody's sharing how they got sick over break and how things didn't work out over break, and they're not ready for things to end, and we're so tired, and I'm over there in the corner. I can't say anything. Because if I'm honest with them, I would tell them the truth. They don't ask, they didn't ask, you know. But if they did ask, what do you think I'm gonna say? I'm not.
Great.
I feel I'm great. Like my directions are active. I'm aware of my breath. I feel really focused. I feel like I cannot be stopped outside of death itself. I feel like the termination of my corporeal spirit is literally the only thing that could even potentially be an obstacle to getting physical shit done. So I was happy to be there. I'm excited to learn the new stuff. I really want more, because we're getting into tools, right? We're getting into physical. This is the things that we do. We're not just in theory anymore. And I like the theory, it's the base and you build. But now it's like, oh, these are the things that I get to do with my hands. And so, like, I'm on pins and needles because I'm excited. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm refreshed. Of course, I can't share that with a room that is comparing, their lack of energy and everything, which I get. I completely understand that. This program can take a lot out of you because it's so intense. It is intense. I have a lot of work to do right now, but I'm gonna make sure that I'm doing my practice.
There's
Yeah.
another part of the story, and whatever you focus on, your biography, your story of your biography is your biology. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you're learning that. You're learning that as directly as anyone possibly can, you and your classmates. And so that whole, I mean, that might be an accurate account of their experience, but it has to do with the story they're telling about their experience, the way they're receiving their experience, what they're doing about the imbalances that may have resulted because of their experience. And and it's a common theme because people tend to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're not doing the same thing, which is why your story is different. You're taking the same classes, it's causing the same amount of exertion, same amount of focus. But you're just have chosen to remember that there are other perspectives and other points of attention in which to observe and navigate this experience that makes it more elegant and more fun, and you can have room for excitement and looking forward to it and get more shit done without getting sick over it
Yeah.
because of that.
Yep. Yeah. And so that I could break down that into, so I wake up and I immediately go into my four directions. My four directions is my fundamental practice, the fundamental thing that I do. And then I just gave you an example of I do the emotional thing, but I also include some of the physical stuff, because I can see physical symptoms in myself, like maybe stool is changing or maybe sweat and temperature and things. So I'm
Sure, but it's
including
all one thing. It's all one thing. Yeah, it's
yeah,
all you. Yeah.
right. So I'm including more than just the emotion. And then I start to focus, I start to charge the element so that I can help harmonize for today. Does that make sense? That's another thing that I do.
Yes,
It's a
and that's
five
why
element
there's
practice.
room for I'm excited to be here. This is
Right.
what I came for. I'm now with this is where the rubber meets the road. I get to actually do the work, and because I actually get to do the thing. I
Mhm.
get to do the acupuncture because I have the base, and this is fun, and this is rewarding, and this is what I desired, and this is what I'm making happen. And you have room to acknowledge that and enjoy it because you are not your attention isn't all in the other.
Right. Yep. And so that was an example of five element Qigong. And that's what I do myself. So throughout the day I am making those adjustments. I'm doing those different things that I described to you. So that's kind of, an example. So in terms of like points of attention and things that I'll be doing today, I'll be filling my cognitive direction with the things that I need to help harmonize all of my elements.
And the things that you want to be in the state of being that you prefer.
That's the desire. And I know that if I am if what you just said is true, then I must have the Shen and the heart element must be reasonably harmonized at the moment, right?
Well, that's why you're in the back of the room not saying anything because they know that you're going to say great.
Maybe they do that. I don't know. I don't
Well,
know. But it was
whatever.
on my
And
face
why
because
that's
I'm
usually the answer.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm great
Mhm.
because I choose to navigate in a way that allows me to feel that way.
But let's not get it twisted. I'm not perfect. Like when I was studying for comps, I was violating principle because I was taking in an enormous amount of information, pretty much nonstop. That's a violation of principle, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
But you also recognize that you can't exist in extreme for a long time without decay happening. So you have one foot in that reality as well.
Mhm.
You were still choosing it. You were still deliberately choosing to be in an extreme.
And did I
There's a
suffer?
difference. Maybe I think you got a little cold.
No, I suffered. No, I suffered. I didn't
Yeah,
get sick. Not,
yeah, I think you did.
no, I got close, but I didn't get like
Sick, sick.
sick. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, I get it.
but so okay, look at this. Just for fun, what element was I imbalancing because of all of the study?
Metal.
Close.
Well, you were
We're gonna think,
controlling, right? You were putting yourself in a
oh, that's a good
capsule.
point. Yeah. And so definitely, and so in that context, if I was displaying mental symptoms, then yeah, that would be
Yeah.
a valid way of looking at it. I think let's look at what is causing the imbalance. So now we're going to look at the etiology because I am taking in tons of information, which is a lot of thought.
Yeah. Yeah, but I
Shana,
was gonna say the earth or whatever.
yep, because the earth element is, so what Donna kind of got to is the ones that I'm going to use to, maybe start to harmonize and things like that. So those would be kind of my rescue elements, starting again to go back to breath and think about the metal element, the one that's not being produced enough, because what produces the metal and the breath is intention and the earth, the intention, attention, ego, and will is water. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Super helpful. Helpful for me too. Yeah. Because it helps me organize things and it's good for me too. Because it's my practice. It's what I'm doing right now.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry. I just have to
That's
run.
okay.
I can't be late.
Nope.
Thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome.
you can finish your thought though.
Yeah. I don't know where was I?
You were talking about how the earth was in balance because of all your thinking and your cognition.
Oh, right. So, what would we say, do you think would be some symptoms that I was experiencing? So this would be good for you, Shayna, since you can maybe associate, with the earth element. Stomach and spleen are associated with the earth element. So I started to have some digestion issues. That was there. I started to have sleep issues because that can start to disturb Shen. It starts to disturb the heart element because what controls intention, attention, and will? Desire. The heart. The heart wants what the heart wants. And so sometimes I was confused about the things that I wanted, out of the program or like which I wanted to study, and just things just did start to get out of balance. And I was watching it and I knew why it was happening, but I had to study. So I just had to accept the suffering and knowing that I was about to get 3 weeks to rebalance, and I did. So, and now hopefully I have some strategies that can help me not get behind it all so I don't have to try to stuff things in, the way that I was doing it. So hopefully I learned and I grew and I can apply that unto wisdom to continue to evolve towards more self-awareness. Yeah. But I definitely have some physical symptoms.
Right, we got to learn from what what your experience was. So always
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah. Yep. Any questions? Does that make sense, Ita?
Yeah, most of it makes sense, although I couldn't describe it if you asked me all the questions about
I
it.
would, yeah.
But
No.
no, while you're talking, I really take it all in, and I'm going, yeah,
Mhm.
far. I'm going these things. But if you ask me to describe it or
No.
to ask me questions about it, I wouldn't be good at that.
I wouldn't expect you to because I just did like a full year of extremely intensive study to where I made myself, out of balance. So I wouldn't expect any, it's I go over this every single day with Shayna. So, she's
Yeah, I
starting
have to
to
see the
put it together.
diagram too. That helps me with
The
like the
diagrams do help.
control. Yeah.
Yeah.
What creates and what controls each
hmm
of the different elements.
hmm
So the diagram is really helpful when I
So
can see it visually.
I was thinking you must have had, well, you probably had tension headaches and tension around your neck and your shoulders when you were studying.
interesting. Why?
Well, because there's a lot of thought,
Mm.
and that's where I know I would feel it if I had to absorb and read a lot. Maybe you practice putting your attention on different parts of your head. I know you do
Mm.
that around your ears and on the front lobe of your, behind your forehead.
hmm
So that might help relieve tension. And because you're doing Tai Chi and probably a bit of Qigong in the afternoons and things to get up and move whenever you're feeling that you've been sitting in a position for a long time, all
hmm
those things. would help that. What really amazes me, listening to you talking today about where you are in your practice. If I woke up in a mood, because we talked about that earlier, if you woke up in a mood or a certain feeling, sadness, usually with me, like a prevailing tiny, it's decreasing now, but a prevailing feeling of um, just a kind of tiny bit of fear. Well, what really amazes me now is with the techniques that we've learned in the class, putting your attention on different things and doing some movement. How now I know experientially that I can change that feeling. And in the past, I would have went with that feeling and had it sort of pervade my early morning till maybe 11, 12 o'clock. Where now using the techniques we've learned in class, putting your attention in different places, places and using your intention to move and your personal power to know that you can affect that is just so incredible to me. And like you said, you're sitting in the corner of the class and you're saying nothing because you're feeling quite good. One of my friends swimming the other day asked me how I was feeling, and I said, I'm feeling so good that I would be afraid to talk about it because you've often said this in case it sounds like boasting. But I have been feeling so well lately that I have to keep it to myself.
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Because the other day I was getting up off the chair. This is just an example. And I did a couple of squats getting up off the chair, and my husband said to me, "That's a hate crime." We were joking about it. He said it's a hate crime because he's disabled, you see. So, well, we use that term, but he has spinal and leg pains and stuff. So I was doing that, and I joke with him because I'm getting up and down off the chair like a teenager now. And he said, "That's a hate crime." But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to sort of comment on the fact that you can change that feeling that I had in the mornings. I can now change that, and that's thanks to using the techniques that I've learned.
Excellent. Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because the irritability, and you mentioned movement, isn't the liver associated with chi stagnation?
Yes.
And so, like, when you mentioned movement, that made me think the movement is helping you get the chi moving.
Yes.
And that could help also make you feel less irritable.
Yes. That's
It's
exactly
so
right.
interesting. I just love how they all connect. So yeah, I get excited like you do when you talk about it.
Yeah, because it all just connects so well. So we gave the example, I gave my example of the earth element being imbalanced. We know the etiology, right, Ida? Because I was overthinking. It wasn't, and it was repetitive as shit. I had to. Like, how do you memorize stuff? You have to repeat it to yourself, right? So I'm not like doing anything bad. It's a principle. I can't escape it. You can't escape it. It is what it is. So I was overthinking, and that caused an imbalance in the earth element, right? That makes sense. So what do you think in these correspondences, Shayna, is so the wood element is like your joints, your tendons. It's called like sinews, uh, I said tendons, ligaments. But what do you think is associated then with muscles? It's not necessarily intuitive, but it's the earth element. So spleen controls muscles. So Ida noticed that when there's a lot of overthinking and it starts to get really imbalanced, we start to feel a lot of physical tension in our muscles. Is that true, Ida?
Yep.
And then we don't move very well. And we start to feel stiffness and then eventually pain, which is what element, Shayna? You just mentioned it?
The liver
Liver
or
and the wood element. Yeah. So we can assume then, at least to some extent, that if Earth is out of balance, wood is no longer controlling it. Wood is supposed to control the Earth.
Yeah, that's just so interesting. I just love it.
But the wood cannot be controlling the Earth if Earth is out of balance. There we go. And so, Ida, if I'm thinking too much, and that's my etiology, now we can use mantras, but do I want to, and that can help redirect to other things, right? But I don't want to just combat my thinking with more thinking, do I?
No, you want to get out of your head and into your body.
And into my body, and maybe do a little movement, as Shayna and you were mentioning, which is the wood element. And then my body will start to feel better. The blood will start to move better. The wood element will start to do perhaps its proper job of controlling the earth. Of course, I also have to nip the etiology in the bud to some extent, and I have to be careful about how much but if I can't, I still want to make sure that I'm helping to supplement the wood element. Oh, well, no, maybe not to supplement the wood element in that regard. It just depends. Because Earth would be in excess in this example. And then that can start to get technical. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily focus on Earth. I would focus on some other things like my breath and some movement. Yeah. And we can also associate different types of fluid movements to water and certain types of breathing to metal. And then that will help our emotions, which is fire. And then the emotions will create a more harmonious Earth. Yeah. Just a way of looking at it, but it works. All right, well, we got all that recorded, so we can post that up to the Four Directions YouTube channel and stuff. Any other questions? iPhone 200, thanks for hanging out. What's it? What's the 200 mean?
Maybe it's like the model of the phone, maybe.
Okay, well, I will see you guys next Friday. We may move the time earlier because it works better for walking the dogs, but we'll let you know. Because I know for European friends, 5 or 6 a.m. isn't a big deal. But yeah, otherwise, I will see you guys next time. If you have questions, just let me know. But I'll see you soon. Enjoy your
Thanks
practice.
very much.
Yep, you're
Earlier
welcome.
would be good too. Yeah, thank you.
Yep, bye.
Bye.